we're talking about it's a mini series, an immersive mini series that is now available in the Front Row app. And this is very much an independent production in all senses of the word. This is something where those of you who were here earlier, I mentioned that Garrick was working with me on this project. Garrick's also in the room here. So very early on, Garrick and I recognized that we loved immersive video and wanted to make something, and played around with different camera systems, and it snowballed until we eventually decided we want to make something substantive, you know, something that tells a story, something that is of a significant quality that we can put out there. So this has been, it's been actually a little over a calendar year since we've been working on this project, and completely independent, completely self-financed, and now it's available for everybody to see. So I wanted to kind of go through and talk about what we learned, what we did, and would love to answer questions if anybody has them. But I figured we'd start off to take a quick look. There's a short flat trailer, so we can see that here just to get an idea of what the project looks like.
You know what they
Got
say.
the audio?
For those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who don't believe, no proof is possible. So anyway. Metaphorically speaking, he or she who can control the turn of a card can control chance. I will try to solve it as quickly as I can. Do not take your eyes off it. Do not. If you're a magician anywhere in the world, your dream is to one day perform at the world-famous Magic Castle in Hollywood, California. There are different venues, different rooms and theaters exclusively devoted to the performance of magic. My name is Siegfried Tieber. My father was born and raised in Austria, that explains the name. However, I was born and raised in Ecuador, that explains the accent. Take a look.
No.
Yes!
Oh my God.
Okay, so that's a quick look at what the project looks like. Of course, that's the flat trailer. You can see the full immersive version of the trailer, and of course, the full series itself on Front Row. We'll talk more a little bit about that as we go. But first, where we started was we wanted to make something, and we're really kind of struggling with what was going to be the subject matter. There's a lot of, travel videos. There's, unfortunately, a lot of kind of adult sort of content that, I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but it wasn't the sort of thing that I wanted to work with. I really wanted to tell a story. Now, I'm surprised it took us this long to figure it out, because Garrick and I are huge fans of magic, and we spend a lot of time at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. Garrick has taken lessons, and we're both fully kind of immersed in that world, and have even talked about making documentaries about it before. And then one day it kind of hit me like lightning. This is the perfect medium for an immersive video. If you ever get the opportunity to go to the Magic Castle, you're a small group of people who actually get to go there and see a show. And then even smaller than that are the people who get to go into the close-up gallery to see the performance. And then if you're really, really, really lucky, the performer asks you to sit right there at the close-up table, and you have the best seat in the world for seeing close-up magic. And we thought this is a tremendous opportunity to put anybody in that seat, that incredibly rare seat, and experience a performance as if you were there, but also tell a story about the performer. And so I told Garrick, Garrick and I were talking about this, and Garrick said, well, I think Siegfried will do it. Siegfried is one of our favorite close-up magicians, and it turns out I didn't even realize, but Garrick had an existing relationship with Siegfried. And so we had some conversations with Siegfried. We ended up going to his place in Los Angeles and pitched the idea. And he's just a guy who loves technology, loves trying new things. So he said, let's give it a go. And so we started putting together this production. Now, the first thing we had to do was settle on the camera. And so we were using the Canon R5C with the dual fisheye lens. And some of you are already thinking, well, that's kind of an older setup. I wish you'd used a newer system like the Blackmagic Cine Immersive. But this was at the time, remember, this was a little less than a year ago when we started gearing up. This was really the only thing on hand. And there, the Blackmagic camera hadn't come out. There's the Immersive company has their proprietary camera. And I even talked to them a little bit, but it just wasn't available for me to use for this production. So we pushed ahead and decided, let's go with the R5C, but do everything we can to maximize the quality of the R5C. And I decided very early that lighting was going to be the absolute key to this. I think you've all seen some pretty good stuff from the R5C. And if you think about it, all of it is exterior, all of it is outdoors. Of course, there's some stuff on Immersive Bliss that had been shot indoors, but it kind of suffered from the lighting. It didn't look that great. And I kind of identified it early as that needed to be lit better. So I've kind of identified, find the things that I'm not good at and hire the people to do it. So we hired lighting people. You can actually see Susie there on the right side of this frame, who's the person we hired to do the lighting. And I think she and her team did an excellent job and really made a world of difference here. Now, of course, there's several topics we could spend some time with production, but very quickly, I'm going to skip through a few things here. I think that one of the biggest, most important things we did was the test shoot. We actually set up the shoot in Siegfried's apartment with a group of friends, and he did a performance right there in his apartment with the R5C with a pretty decent lighting setup. So we could identify, is this thing going to actually work before we put any more money into it? And we did a lot of things wrong in that test shoot. We identified a lot of problems, but we decided it was worth doing. We found a lot of things that we knew we could fix and we know we could proceed. This test shoot was absolutely vital. And if you're doing a production of any size, I would recommend doing a test shoot like this up front. And then, of course, there's tons of work, location booking. I could tell a whole story of how we got to shoot at the Magic Castle. Basically, the short version is the people at the Magic Castle love Siegfried, and some doors opened and made it a lot easier for us. Booking an audience was a fun challenge, but we got a great audience in there for the performance scenes. That was something we had to work on. I was very happy that we collected still photographs with a professional photographer that we could use for promotional material and posters and stuff like that. I'm always happy to answer questions about any of those things, but I thought what would be more interesting is to get into some of the locations that you'll see in the piece and where we shot and some of the challenges and some of the fun stuff that came from it. Of course, the main thing, the main sequence in this piece is there in this room called the close-up gallery. This is one of 5 or 7 rooms in the Magic Castle, and in my opinion, it's the best room. This holds, I think, it has 16 seats, a maximum of 20 people if you let people stand in the wings. It's a very, very small room, very close up, very intimate, where you get close up magic. And this was our hero shot here, where we have an immersive camera right there against the table. Now you're seeing the stereo version here, but for some of the screenshots, let's just focus on one eye at a time. It'll be a little bit easier to see. So this is what I was talking about before. This puts you in that seat, that best possible seat for close-up magic. And keep in mind, when you're in the headset, you're roughly seeing a perspective about this size with the opportunity to look around at whatever you're interested in. And so this gives us the magician's ability to draw your attention to what they want to draw your attention to. Or if he's talking to the audience, you can look out to the audience. You want to look at him in the face, you can look at him there. But if you decide, oh, I want to catch the trick, I want to catch the move he does, you can stare at his hands. So you get to decide what you're looking at any moment, and that's that immersive experience. But we also identified pretty early that this would be most successful if we could have 2 angles in that space. And that's what we're seeing here. So the image you see on the left is a camera in the audience. So we actually rigged up an R5C directly over one of the seats. And it's a little higher than I would have liked it to be, but we were limited with how we could position stuff. But from this perspective, you can look to your left, you can look to your right, and you can see the other people in the audience. And then we could intercut that with the close up the seat at the actual table. And so now we're getting into real traditional filmmaking techniques. It's not just one camera on sticks in one position. We're cutting back and forth here. So yeah, here's that wide angle view. And of course, this is roughly what you see when you're looking straight ahead, but you can look around and see everything around you just like that. Now, one of the important things that we identified is if you're cutting from one angle to another, because the viewer has the independent ability to look wherever they want, those cuts can be jarring. And the way we address this was trying to have the most interesting point of focus in the center of the frame in both angles. So when we cut from one to the other, more likely than not, your eyes are on the performer, and that cut is much less jarring. And if your eyes are not on the performer, you still have that point of focus. It still lands in the center. So after the cut, your eyes can go back naturally to the center where you would expect the main point of focus to be. When we talk about immersive video, there's a lot of people talk about, if the audience can look anywhere, how do you compose a shot? How do you tell a story? But I think we really learned that there's still a center of the frame. There is still a natural landing point, and I think that really works in our favor. And if you can recognize that when cutting from shot to shot, I think it really helps. So this was our main part of the video, was this performance in the close-up gallery. Oh, sorry, there was one other thing I did want to point out. Those of you may have noticed that because we have two cameras, one camera can see the other. The camera that is in the audience can see the camera that's next to the close-up table. So on one hand, you can kind of see what our setup looked at here. We kind of covered it with a shroud, but also it's a challenge and it's a limitation. And far too late in the process, somebody mentioned to me, well, you could just pull that camera out of there at the end of the sequence and shoot a plate of the room without the camera there and then mask it. And I wish I had thought of that earlier, because that would have made a big difference. So if you're in that position, consider if you can put the camera somewhere and then pull it out of frame long enough to get a plate so you can mask it out later. But with that in mind, I don't think it's too distracting. Now, here is another place. This is another room within the Magic Castle. This is called the Library Bar, and it's actually a working bar where they serve drinks, but the performer is there, not all the time, but for certain shows, the performer is there behind the bar. And I thought this was a fun shot to look at, because there's some real challenges, some real difficulties that we had to deal with here. This particular shot was something we considered a test shoot. This was early on. We got permission to go shoot at the castle. We weren't ready for our full production. So I had a monopod with a gimbal with the R5C on top. And it was kind of a terrible idea. And I thought, I'm not going to use this at all, but let me go see what we can get. And it turned out I kind of fell in love with this performance and I wanted to use this shot. So right off the bat, you might see some problems here. The camera was not completely level. If this is the front of the camera, this is the back of the camera. The camera was kind of tilted up, which is a horrible idea. You don't want to have your camera tilted like that. I knew it, but I also thought, we're not going to use this shot. So a big part of the post-production here, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, is the Cardiverse set of tools. A guy named Andrew Hazelden makes a free set of tools called Cardiverse that you can use inside of DaVinci Resolve to manipulate your equirectangular video. And he was a tremendous help. I love Andrew, never met him in person, only through email, but he's been an incredible help. And he helped me figure out this technique with some of his tools where we could rotate this just a little bit. And so it kind of messes up the borders, but it still made everything as flat as we needed it to be. Now, of course, you're still seeing something else here. Look in the middle of the frame. In between these two, you can actually see the lenses. Most of us know about this. in these dual fisheye setups, one lens can see the other lens. So we had to remove that. And for some of our shots, we accomplished that by using a vignette. Now, there's other reasons why I used the vignette. I'll talk more about that later, but we're kind of, centering down in the middle of the frame here. And we lose some field of view, but depending on how much of vignette you use, your audience may not notice it at all. So you can see there were several challenges, not just to this shot, but to most of our shots that we had to work through like this until we could get our final result. And don't even get me started on color correction. That is a huge thing. So the bar was fun. The exterior of the castle is very fun. And this is the thing that I most enjoy when I show this to people and I give them my Apple Vision headset and watch them as they watch the video. Because as soon as we cut to this exterior, I can see people look up, and I can see them looking around this space. And seeing a tall building like this in the immersive space is very fun. This is a fun shot in the video. Let's see, what else did I have here? Oh, yeah. So, on the theme of storytelling, we knew we wanted to have interviews. So, this is as much Siegfried's story as it is Siegfried's performances. So we had very, very limited time in the Magic Castle, so I wasn't sure we'd be able to get our interviews there. So we ended up booking this other studio, and this is a great independent studio. Has lots of different interesting angles, and this angle looked like a nice living space. I didn't want to try to trick people to think we were in the Magic Castle. My hope is that people see this and think maybe it's Siegfried's home, but it was a studio where we had more space, where we could set up lights and everything. But you can look all around the space. You can see I have a much smaller vignette, or a much wider vignette, however you want to phrase that. But I'll talk more about that in a minute as well. But we did still luck out. We had just enough time in the Magic Castle to do another set of interviews. And I really like this setup. This was that same close-up gallery where we had our main performance, but we flipped it around with the camera behind the performance table and Siegfried in the audience space. And what I love about this is when you're watching this, you're probably looking here. But if you're interested and you look around, you might notice the cube and the cards on the table and notice that we're in that same performance space. Not everybody sees it because not everybody looks around, but it's there if you catch it. And then this was one of my most favorite shots. We wanted a direct over the shoulder to get you as close to the magic as we possibly could. But it gave us some real challenges. With the camera that close to Siegfried's face, it breaks the 3D convergence, like terribly. It's pretty horrible when you see this fully composed shot. But we found that vignetting in really, really tight, the audience does notice a difference. They do see a change in the field of view, but it's almost like this keyhole peek into something that you wouldn't normally see. And I think it works in the piece. Another interesting thing that you see here is that the action is not in the center of the frame. So when you cut to the shot, you're looking roughly in the middle, but the audience is motivated. They can see the hands enough to make them want to look down. And I think that really increases the immersion. If you can put something in the frame that suggests to the audience, hey, look over here, it's really satisfying when they do. And in this case, they get to see some really incredible flourishes of close-up magic there. So those were a few of my favorite shots and some challenges we had going through them. Of course, next I'm going to talk about post-production. And at any time, if you do have thoughts or questions, you want to jump in here, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'm just kind of going on the stuff that I had prepared to talk about. But post-production is a huge, huge thing. This has been many, many months of my life here. So let's talk about what we dealt with here. First of all, I really, really encourage you, if you haven't seen it, download the Front Row Immersive or Front Row Experiences app and at least take a look at the trailer, because I think that you will find that the quality in this video is better than most, if not all, R5C footage you've seen. And I think it comes pretty close to rivaling the Blackmagic Cinecam. And I can tell you some of the things that we did in post-production one of the tough things here is that I was taught some incredible post-production techniques by somebody else. So some of the things that I did here are not my own. And at this point in time, I don't have permission to share all of it with you. One day I might be able to and might make some YouTube videos, but at the moment, there are some tricks that I used here that unfortunately I can't share. But there are still some valuable things that I can share. So first, what most people would use would be the what is it, the Canon EOS VR utility that you get from Canon. It's a companion piece of software with the R5C to import your footage from the camera, convert it from the fisheye to the equirectangular, and then edit in Adobe Premiere. And I did not do that for many reasons that I'm going to share with you. Instead, what I did was I took the raw CRM files directly from the memory card from the camera and imported directly into DaVinci Resolve. Now, what does this do for you? Well, you're working directly with the raw file, which is a standard that DaVinci can work with and can give you access to camera settings in post-production. Probably the most important thing is that you can adjust the ISO after shooting. And this made a huge difference for us. It made it a lot easier to get the exposures that we wanted. Also, working with the raw directly in DaVinci Resolve gives you significantly better quality. There is some quality loss going through Canon's tools. I can't really quantify it, but there is a quality loss there. And the big thing here is HDR. Apple Vision Pro supports HDR, and this was a big priority for us. Now, I have put some tutorials on YouTube about parts of this workflow and had some really valuable conversations with people in the YouTube comments. And through those conversations, did find that there is a way to get HDR using the Canon VR utility and Premiere, but it's not great. The best color science, the best color tools are going to be in DaVinci Resolve, and the best workflow for HDR is to bring your camera raw directly into DaVinci Resolve. So that's what I did. Now, you've probably heard that noise reduction is important for something like the R5C and for a lot of immersive video. And I cannot underscore this enough. It's an easy thing to hear and tuck away and move on and forget, but noise reduction is unbelievably vital. When this footage is blown up to fully, 180-degree field of view, the grain and the noise, especially because we were shooting in dark interiors, that grain was just off the wall. It was absolutely terrible. This is worth every penny. There are other tools. There are noise reduction tools built into DaVinci Resolve, but I found that Neat Video was the best balance for the cost, for how easy it is to use, and how effective it was. So we use the Neat Video plugin in DaVinci Resolve to take out as much noise as possible. And again, I'd be glad to talk to people after this about techniques and details about how we did this. And then there's upscaling. Roughly speaking, the R5C is an 8K sensor, which translates to roughly 4K per eye, which is actually not that great when you come down to the 180-degree field of view stretched across your face. So I use Topaz Video AI to upscale. This is a long, time-intensive, laborious process, and it takes an unbelievable amount of storage space. And I tried to go as high as 8K per eye, but I ended up choking out DaVinci Resolve on my computer. What I ended up doing was it 6K per? Yeah, 6K per eye is roughly the resolution that I landed on that looked quite a bit better, but Resolve still would work. And we were not even close to real-time playback. Don't trick yourself into thinking I had real-time playback, but it was workable at those resolutions. And I would suggest, if you're experimenting with this, there's a certain side effect to running your video through Topaz AI. There's a smoothing that takes place. I'm not going to say with all of the AI upscaling models, but in my experience, most of the upscaling models in Topaz give you a result that is significantly smoother. Now, if you feed it video that has noise, if you have not done the noise reduction step, if your video has noise, then it takes a ton of time crunching through this very noisy video, and it doesn't give you very good results. But because I've smoothed it in advance, removed as much noise as I can, the AI upscaling has an easier time. And it gives us this really, I can't find another word except for smooth, very clean, smooth video on the other end. And I would suggest, even if you don't upscale, even if you ran it through Topaz and did not change the resolution, you would still benefit from the smoothing that takes place going through this process. I think it's worth a look. And when I bought it, I think they only had the yearly membership or the yearly subscription. So I might have had a discount, like a special sale or something, but I paid for a year. Now, the fact that it's $33 a month, I think it's definitely worth a trial if you're worth a try if you're working on a production like this. But I can't stress enough how important it is to go through the noise reduction first, then go through your AI upscaling. Then, of course, after you've done all that, the big thing is to convert it to equirectangular. On the left side here, we see what the camera sees, which we can call the fisheye view. And this is basically the space that the Blackmagic Cine camera works in all the way through. They call it lens space. But the camera produces this fisheye view. And for most playback software, you want the equirectangular view, which is what we see on the right side. And if you use the Canon VR utility, it does this for you. But since I wanted all of those other benefits, the higher quality, being able to adjust ISO in post-production, being able to use the strong HDR workflow, I didn't use Canon's VR utility, so I had to convert to equirectangular in post-production. And to do that, we used the Cardiverse tools. So I definitely recommend you look into Cardiverse. This is a free set of plugins that you can install in DaVinci Resolve. And as a matter of fact, I need to share the link to my YouTube channel because I have tutorials on my YouTube channel for how to install and use Cardiverse. So it's definitely worth taking a look at that. So generally, just quickly what this process looks like, you've got your fisheye and you use Cardiverse to turn it into the equirectangular. Now, if we take a step back to that fisheye, I want you to look all the way on the far left and right sides where we can see the other lens. Remember, each fisheye sees the other lens. But something about how it exposes to the sensor in the R5C, the lenses are on the far left and right. But after you do the equirectangular conversion, you'll see the lenses are in the middle where they should be. So now we have the challenge of those lenses. And the way the Canon VR utility addresses this is by cooking in a plate, a mat over your equirectangular footage that's like a vignette, but also has a black bump over those lenses. Personally, I hate that. Whenever I look at immersive video and I look all the way to the left and right, and I don't see a perfectly round, frame around me, I see those weird little bumps on the left and right. That breaks the immersion for me. I hate that. So I did not want that bump. And of course, I didn't want that lens. So I found a video on YouTube where somebody had a technique in Premiere to mask out those lenses. And I kind of adapted it and optimized it for DaVinci Resolve, where I was able to completely erase those lenses. And the trick here is that you're sampling a little bit from the other frame to paste over. So take a little bit from the right eye to paste over the lens on the left eye. Take a little bit of material from the left eye to paste over the lens in the right eye, which means that in these little pieces of space where the lens was, you now have 2D video. It's not 3D anymore because you're putting in this weird plate. So you've got to do things with feathering that mask and some weird manipulation so people don't notice it. But I think we got a pretty good result here. Again, I recommend you check it out and let me know how you think it worked out. And again, this is a much more detailed process that I'd be happy to discuss later. But I think we did a pretty good job of just making those lenses go away. But now if you look in the center of the frame, you can see that my lights were peeking into the frame. So every now and then you'll screw this up a little bit. So then we used the vignette. And this is another thing in the Cardiverse tools. You can set up a vignette and you can adjust how much of a vignette you want. The vignette that you see here looks pretty significant, but I swear in the headset, you cannot tell how much field of view you've lost with this little bit of a vignette. Anybody looking at this would think there's no vignette at all. Of course, you can bring it down until people do notice it, but you can see I was able to mask out anything that might have been on those edges, and people don't really know it's gone. So that's generally the process we did with Cardiverse. Just keep in mind it's more complex, and I'd be more than happy to talk details. Okay, so from there, when we're starting to get close to having something that we can deliver, we have to think about collaboration. Garrick and I went back and forth on different cuts and, you know, talking about changes that we'd want to make, so we needed to share the video between us. Also, we want to be able to see the video in the headset. So if you're not familiar with Spatial Gen is a hosting service. So if you need to put your video online and get a streaming link that you can share with other people, Spatial Gen is a great service. But they are built for larger, more enterprise deployments. So it's not that expensive, but I'll say it was enough for me to spend to get 1 month of Spatial Gen so I could get a streaming link that I could share with people as I was trying to find a home for publishing it. But what's going to be better in most cases is to use the tools offered by Acute. And I don't know if Anthony or Paul are in the call right now. I can't see the whole list. But Anthony and Paul from Acute, they're often in this meetup. Great guys. They're really supportive. They want us to succeed. They want to help immersive filmmakers like us. So they've got a couple of tools. Open Immersive is an app where you can just view your equirectangular videos in the headset. And before Vision OS 26, it was the only way to view your equirectangular. Now you can actually view it right there in the file browser on the headset. But during this whole post-production, Open Immersive was absolutely vital. And then Acute Pro is a platform where you can upload your immersive videos and then share links with your collaborators, or even set up like an LMS or CMS sort of environment where your collaborators can be members of that group, and you can share these videos and share notes that way. So most people should not have to bother with Spatial Gen, the host that I mentioned a moment ago. I would strongly recommend take a look at these tools by Acute, and these are going to be your best way to share and compare your video with other people. And then we got around to publication. And, you know, this was a tough one. We really struggled with whether we were going to build our own app, but we did not want to have to go through all the work of building our own app and setting up the payment model and all that. And, you know, we didn't really want to put it on one of the free platforms because I do hope to make a little bit of money. I know it's not going to be a huge money maker, but I'd like to make a little bit of money off of it. But also there is something about having it on, you know, a more established platform. So we talked to a lot of different services. We talked to Immersive Bliss for a while. But as many of you may know, Immersive Bliss kind of went away, but the timing worked out really well because Front Row was launching around the time we were trying to publish. And so Tom Reddig, who was the producer on the series Sessions, he's been a great help to me, a great advisor through this whole thing. He put me in contact with Brenton. Brenton is also here in this meeting. So I shared the project with Brenton. We talked a little about it, and I was very happy that Brenton liked the project and was willing to publish it on Front Row. So Front Row is a fairly new app now. It's since the relaunch. It's been out for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks now. And Brenton, if there's anything you want to say about Front Row Immersive, this would be a good time. But this is ultimately where we landed.
Yeah, I'll jump in at the end. I'll let you keep kind of going with your flow.
Okay.
Yeah, we launched while we were at the Apple Immersive conference. I don't recommend doing a product launch when you're at a conference. I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, that's so it's been out for about 2 weeks. Our 2.0.1 release is in test flight right now, so we'll have a couple bug fixes going out. And yeah, we're hoping to start advertising this experience across Reddit and a couple other channels starting next week once that bug fix release gets pushed up.
And I think it's a great home for this project, and it's great to see it alongside of other great productions. There's the Marquise Knox concert that is on there now, and I know that Brenton's got some projects that he's cooking up, some other things that they're producing internally, and I don't even know what other, you know, third-party publishers might show up there. And they've absorbed the existing library from Immersive Bliss. So anything that you may have seen in Immersive Bliss in the past, I don't know, Brenton, is it everything or?
It is almost everything.
Almost everything.
Yeah, practically everything except for some of the music experiences that they had on there.
Okay. So there's already this established library. So strongly recommend you take a look at Front Row. And so our project, You Are Here, ended up being 2 episodes. So we're calling it a mini series. The first episode is live on Front Row now, as well as the trailer, so you can check it out there. And Brenton wants to have a regular pace of releases in Front Row. So we're going to identify a place where episode 2 will slot in, where we can keep up that pace, or he can keep on that pace on Front Row, and it can slot in there. So that's where we landed, and that is now our happy home for You Are Here at the Magic Castle with Siegfried Tieber. So that's my presentation. Let me go ahead and stop sharing there, and I'd be more than happy to discuss things if anybody has questions or any thoughts or anything about what we did there. And frankly, I hope you go to Front Row and check it out.